Frontliners. I'm William Young, correctional officer, author, and correctional content creator here at Just Corrections. Thanks for joining us tonight. Hang on. Quiet! Sorry, I'm trying to. Every time I live stream, every time I tell the whole house, say, look, Dad's doing a show. But I have a house full of teenagers, and it's like it jacks them up. Like it's like they're all on pre-workout buzzing around the house. So let me give this one more shot, okay? Good evening, my fellow frontliners. I'm William Young, correctional officer, author, and there you go, content creator here at Just Corrections. Thanks for joining me. I have a fantastic guest tonight. Tonight we're going to talk about talking. Well, not really. We're going to talk about actual communication. We're going to dive into crisis communication, and I think in our vocation in the correctional profession, this skill is super important. So clear your calendar, grab something to drink, kick your feet up. And let's see where it goes. But before we dive into this, before we get ready, make sure to like, share, subscribe to this channel for premium correctional content like this. All right. And contribute to the conversation, if you will. Leave a comment, put a question in the chat. And me and my guest tonight, we're going to get to them after our little back and forth. So please feel free to contribute to that. I look forward to seeing what you guys have to say. And tonight I have for you guys an amazing guest and a guy that I communicate with on a fairly regular basis. Ever since I saw him, was introduced to him through this show that he was on, and we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. My career path has changed, kind of my outlook on how I communicate with people. And tonight, so I want to introduce him here tonight with me. I have a gentleman, a retired police officer, author. He's a national speaker, crisis and resiliency extraordinaire. And the subject, this is my favorite part, the subject of two-time Emmy award-winning HBO documentary, Ernie and Joe, Crisis Cops. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome, let me get him here on the thing, Ernie Stevens.
Wow.
Yeah, how'd you like that?
I'm speechless, brother. I don't know how you do it.
I'm doing good. Do you ever get uncomfortable when people like run through your resume when they're talking about it? Do you ever be like, I don't know?
It just the buildup like you do, yes. But if people can just read it normal without the craziness, then yeah, I mean it's not bad. And like you said, your house gets full of loud noises with teenagers. Every time I get ready to do a show, I drink some water and I swallow it incorrectly, and then I sound ridiculous for the next hour.
Yeah, that's okay. That's one of the things. I have a couple of podcasts that I listen to and stuff, and the one guy just recently had a baby, and like halfway through the episode, the baby's just going crazy, and he just said, "You know what? I'm not even going to try to pretend. We just had a baby. My wife's in the next room. You're going to hear the baby. If you don't like it, take off." I mean, it's just great. But no, I just always wonder that because I run through. I talk to you, personal level, back and forth. We text back and forth. And it's awesome when you see, like when I was introduced to you on the documentary Crisis Cops, and I'm like, man, look at this guy. This is such an awesome guy. He's such a role model. And then to be able to have, your number and my contacts, to be able to get a call from you on a Saturday afternoon, man, it's huge. It means a lot. Your friendship means a lot to me. And for you taking time out of your busy schedule between appearances and between life, man, to come on the show and talk to me and talk to these people. It's super. I really appreciate it, man. Thank you.
No,
thank you very much.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. And it's a two-way street. Oh, look at that, man. OG, that's old school. I love it.
This is one of my prized possessions. I got to get it up on the wall. Ernie sent me this poster, autographed poster. And I love it, man. It's super. I can't wait to hang it up. It means a ton to me, dude. We talk about. I probably talk about you at least once a week, at least twice a week when we are at work between shifts, when we're handling situations. And I told you before we got on that I just got back from a crisis negotiation academy, sending some of our people through. And some of the concepts that I learned from you, some of the things that I watched you do, and that I read about in your book here, and we're going to get to that in a second. It's helped me, and I tell as many people about it as I can because it's fantastic information, man. And congratulations on this book, by the way. If you guys are watching and you don't have this book, after the stream here, jump on Amazon and pick this book up, because it is, you can see I've bookmarked it. There's highlights in here. I went through this thing like I was studying for a college midterm, man.
Just pick all the above, man. I don't think you can go wrong with that.
Right. Multiple choice.
Yeah.
Multiple choice. But here's where it hooks. So I'm reading and I'm going through and I'm like, yeah, this is good. This is good. This is good. But then this quote caught me, and I started highlighting things in the book here. And so I want to read this to everybody, and then we're going to dive into the interview. I want to talk about a couple of concepts that you bring forth in the book here. But I want to start with this, because some people in the correctional world and law enforcement world, they think that the communication part is boring. They want to know about judo, and they want to know about takedowns and pressure points and all of those things. And those are very important when it comes to our physical self-defense. But if you think about what you do during a daily basis and how you spend the majority of your time, I mean, it's communicating. And so to be able to have those tools in your toolbox is super helpful. So this is what caught my attention. And this is what I'm going to use when I start pitching this communication idea. It says communication is a basic tactical skill in crisis intervention. So I've never heard anybody use the word tactical and communication in the same sentence. And I think that is an attention grabber, especially in this world, in this realm. I think that's so important. And it says, you say, yes, I use the word tactical. The way we communicate can either establish understanding and diffuse a situation, or it can be perceived as threatening, leading to confusion and increasing frustration, anger, and fear. It is essential for the crisis intervention team officer to communicate well, because they can either solve the problem. This is what I want people to take. You can either solve the problem or create a new one or a bigger one. And I think that's what we need to understand here tonight. So the thing is this, Ernie, and I love that you put this book out, and I love that Nick is pumping these books out. It's so important out there to have officers such as yourself, to have people such as yourself with your reputation, your credibility, to put books like this out here on the market for us sponges to soak it all up, because we need it. There's a lot of people out there that are experts, that have studied this kind of stuff and will teach it to us, and then there's the people that have actually put it forth. So how did you get into this world of communication? I mean, was this something you were always like, hey, I love talking to people and I want to do this in the job, or is this something that you had to learn?
Yeah, no, I did not. So thank you for asking these questions, because this is important, right? I was a police officer for 2 years, almost 3 years at a small department. Then I went to the San Antonio Police Department, was there about 15 years. So now I got almost 18 years under my belt. Really had never taken a class in communication. Didn't understand the importance of it. I, like many first responders, practiced martial arts. I had all the tools to keep me safe on my belt. I could push a button and have people at my side in a matter of minutes to help me out. And I never understood the importance of communication. I never understood not only that it could keep me safe at work, but it could make me a better listener at home. It can make me a better, right? I mean, it just, and I didn't even sign up for the class. I got signed up for the class for crisis intervention training on my day off by a friend of mine, just because we worked nights. And if you sign up for a class, you get to go to a daylight shift, right, for a week and get a weekend off. So who cared what the training was? Sign us up. I want to sleep in my own bed at night,
right,
and have a weekend off. But when I came back to work the next day, I found out what the training was. A lot of pushback, William. I was like, no, I don't want to go to this crap. Like, this is a hug a thug. I'm not a social worker. Who really cares? I mean, I'm supposed to ask somebody to do something, and then I'm going to tell them to do it, and then I'm going to make them do it because that's how they told me to do it, my job, right? So I'm going based on my training. But it was too late. I couldn't get out of the training. And day one, this class, active listening, was the foundation class. And I'm amazed that they don't teach this in academies. And if they do now, bravo, but a lot of them don't. I never learned it.
Right.
I just like anybody else, tried to communicate my point and then used my uniform as a show of presence, and then asked what I needed and then told them what I needed done. If it didn't happen, then we'd take it to the next level from there. So I really wasn't doing you a really good service as a listener. But this class, active listening, I really took it to heart, um, because it started making sense. Right away, we had to go into role plays that afternoon and practice the 7 skills that make up active listening. So I had to pay attention during the day because now the rubber's going to meet the road when we do the role plays. And the role players were trained to respond if you're actually using the set of skills.
Right.
And if you just focused in on just one of them, like open-ended questions or questions and answers, right? Which police officers love, the who, what, when, why, and how questions,
Right.
but they're not familiar with the other 6 ways to communicate. That role player would just shut you off real quick, and you would have to kind of go back and start back over. So, and I do say that it's a tactical skill, right? Because really, what are tactics? Tactics are things that we learn to keep us safe. And as I get older, and I'm tired of fighting, and I'm tired
Right.
of getting my uniform ripped and having to pay for new stuff, it made sense. Let's work smarter, not harder, and learn to communicate. With that came a whole set of knowledge about human connection and empathy.
Do you look back on some of your interactions before you had this information and say, "Man, that could have went a lot different if I would have just known this, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, XYZ would have turned out completely different."
Oh, my whole life, my personal life might have turned out differently, to
Mm,
be honest with you. I wasn't a very good listener. Only listened to things I was saying because I wanted to be heard. I really didn't put too much value into what other people were saying because I had an agenda, right? I had
right.
an agenda at work. If I was assigned to the DWI unit, my agenda was find and arrest drunks. If I was assigned to the gang unit, it's go after drugs, weapons, and stolen property or whatever. So,
Right.
in police work, probably same in corrections, you have an agenda that you need to stick with.
Mhm.
And talking and connecting to people really wasn't on my agenda each and every
Right.
day,
Yeah.
which I was missing the point, right? I was doing a disservice to the community, to be honest with you.
Well, and we're like you spoke to earlier, we're taught to not do that. We're told to build a rapport with the population, but then we're told to not talk to the population, to not, and our response in corrections, and I'm sure it is the same for other law enforcement entities, but you always have something else that you're getting to that you have to do. And so this interaction that with this individual here is one of 6 things you have stacked up. And so you're kind of under this pressure of hurrying up, solving the problem, moving on to the next thing. And that's kind of the opposite of what your book talks about, and kind of the principles of active listening, crisis intervention, is slowing that down and building that rapport, true rapport, so you could have an actual back and forth. Um, how did how did how did this come about? How did the book come to fruition?
So Nick, Nick Ruggiero, uh, Mr. Book Writer himself, he
Right.
reached out to me and said, "Hey, do you want to collaborate on a book about homicide?" I'm like, I mean, I've worked a few, but I don't
Right.
know if I don't know if I have a specialty in homicide. I've got some funny stories, but as far as the knowledge of homicide,
Right.
I'm not your guy, probably not. But if you ever want to talk about mental health, and he was like, "Oh my god, I forgot, man. I'm sorry."
Right.
Like, yeah, let's do mental health, and I'm like, okay, I think I can talk about that. So, what was funny was, as we decided to go ahead and do this, we didn't communicate with each other at all during the process. I had no clue what he was going to write. He had no clue what I was going to write. He said, "Write about 50 pages. I'll do 50, and we'll compare notes and make sure that we're not stepping on each other's toes." And he was just very nonchalant about it. And I'm nervous. I've never done this before. I'm, it's one of those things where I'm like, man, I hope I use words correctly. Like I'm just
Right.
not a book writer, right?
Right.
So I end up getting COVID. So now I got plenty of time to write a book because I'm stuck and can't get out the house.
Right.
He ends up getting COVID. Sorry, HIPAA violation.
Yep.
I don't care. Sue me. He gets COVID, and now he's stuck. So we're writing it at the same time. And I send it over to him. I said, "Hey, man, you want to look this over?" And he's like, "Oh man, dude, you nailed it. I'm actually talking about some other things in the book." And it was supposed to be a 50-50 book. And it ended up being like I wrote, I think, like 83 pages, and he wrote like 30 something because just the flow of it, because it's written as a training manual. I think
Mhm.
it just worked out better with that flow. And he's a very humble guy, and I think he was
Oh, he's a
being
nice
very
guy.
generous.
Yeah.
Yeah, being
Mhm.
very generous to me as well.
Yeah. No, like I said, it's a fantastic book, and there's some things in here that I want to touch on tonight. Like I said, I sat down between my regular shift and my overtime shift, and I cracked this, and within a few pages, I was and even from a guy who has, if you're out there and you've studied active listening, you think you've gone through a CIT course, all that's good, but there's gems in here that you can find that you can apply immediately that you need to look at. And for correctional officers out there that are watching this, it, this stuff is not taught in the academy. This is something that you have to hopefully maybe get into a training later on, or you have to go study on your own. So, mental health and de-escalation on Amazon. Check this out because there's some stuff. We're going to talk about a couple of things here that kind of fly in the face of what we've been taught. And I think it's kind of fun because I know that when people hear this, they're going to be like, "This is total bullshit. I'm not ever going to do this." But if you do it, it works, and it honestly changes. It changes the game for you, whether you're on the street, outside of the walls, or inside the walls. So the first thing that I want to talk about, and I want to ask you about, is this funny thing called, and I've done this before, but I've never. Again, you're using fun words, instructor words, tactical compromise. And there was
Mm.
a post that I saw in an article or something on correctional forum, and the topic was, would you ever shake hands with an inmate? And people were like, no, I'd never do that. They'd bring it in and they'd pull you in and they'd kill you. And there's all kinds of things that they're talking about. And I'm sure that, on the street, shaking hands with somebody you encounter, there's always risk, right? So what is tactical compromise? And then how do you balance your safety with this rapport building that you talk about in the book here?
Yeah, so good. Let's peel the layers back on this a little bit. So, a tactical compromise really, it's a compromise of something that you wouldn't normally do on a call. Like you said, normally a correction officer isn't going to shake hands with an inmate. Usually,
Right.
a police officer walking into a call on a disturbance isn't going to shake hands. They're most likely not ever going to sit down and just make themselves comfortable and be like, "Hey, why don't you have a seat and tell me about this disturbance that's going on?"
Right.
Right? And I'm not saying you should be doing that. What I am saying is be familiar with what you're dealing with. The calls that Joe and I were going on, these were just mental health calls strictly. We were on the mental health unit. Every single call had a mental health related component to it. So we were very comfortable in that setting, knowing what we were going into. I knew who I was going to talk to, and I knew who he was going to talk to. He was a veteran in the Marines. He was going to talk to veterans if we had one. I worked really well with adolescents and kids if it was something to do with that. And then if not, we would just trade off whatever the call was. But I knew that he would always be close, and he knew I would always be close. So the tactical compromise for us, and in the film, you'll see a couple of instances where we sit down with somebody. One is an
Right.
individual in a courtroom that's
Right.
pacing back and forth and extremely paranoid. So Joe took the stance to sit down. I was a little further away. I sat down as well on one of the like the pew benches there, and told him, "Why don't you have a seat and talk to us for a minute?" And it calmed the situation down,
Mhm.
right? Kendra on the bridge, when she was about to jump off the bridge, I sat down. I sat down for a couple of reasons, William. I sat down, one, to be honest with you, I'm scared of heights. Let's just put it out there, man. I I probably couldn't have gotten any closer to her if I wanted to, but also I knew what I was dealing with.
Right.
I knew that that would change the game if that was going to be a hook for her.
Mhm.
And she told me later, spoiler alert, she didn't jump, that on the way to the crisis center where we were getting her help, she asked me, "Why did you sit down? Like, I thought you were supposed to come grab me." And I'm like, "Why would I do that?"
Right.
I said, "Kendra, I wanted you to come be with me where it was safe so we could talk. I only
Right.
came there to talk to you." And so these are tactical compromises. Now, I would say situations are fluid. So do be
Mhm.
careful. That the situation on the bridge, I do want to bring this up. Every time we screen the film somewhere on the film festival, there's always some officers in the audience, And there was on a couple of occasions, I had officers challenge me. Why did you sit down? Why would you do that? That's bad tactics. I would never do that. Well, I ended up making contact with Joe Navarro from the FBI, and he is
Hmm.
like the body. Um, he studies movements, micro expressions, body language. Like he is the guy that can get people to confess. He would tell you who's lying. He could capture these terrorists, get confessions out of them. Like he is the top guy. And I got a hold of him and I said, "Hey, can I send you a small clip of a video and I want you to watch it?" He watched that clip on the bridge and said, "You did everything perfect. Like your distance was good, your tone of voice was good, your intonation was good. Um, if anybody's beating you up on it, send them my way." So it was good to get validation from
Right.
somebody who's really an expert in their field, especially at the federal level that does what he does. And these are tactical compromises. You have to be comfortable in the setting that you're in, I guess.
Yeah, I mean that's and you talk a little bit about the 3-minute assessment and walking in. It's not like you just walk into a situation, you sit down or you extend your hand or pat somebody on the back. You really you use your training, you look, you want to make sure the scene's safe first. And I just thought because you brought that up in the book and then that article that just came out, and the context of the article was, the inmates getting out, says thanks for, what you did for me, extends their hand, what would you do? But when I've talked to people inside, you have to kind of step out of your, let's see if I explain this right. I feel like I step out of my official role, officer, so and so, and try to build that connection, like you said, to sitting down, lowering your voice, slowing your rate of speech helps de-escalate that situation. And again, that kind of flies in the face of what we were taught. And so I just think that's super important. You bring up in the book, um, are you willing to sit down with a person so that you're not standing over them and now you are at their level? And then you talk about the 3-minute assessment. I think that's little things like that. We don't understand how imposing we are, or how frightening it can be for somebody who's in a mental health crisis, who's suicidal, who's freaking out, to have that officer presence and to have that official, sir, ma'am, you're going to do what I tell you to do. So it's up to us to set that tone and to de-escalate that situation. You mentioned hook a little bit ago. For the people that don't know what a hook is, can you explain a hook?
Yeah, man, you're fresh out of negotiator class right
That's
over
right,
there.
that's right. I
Yeah,
have it
so you
up on
got
my
hook
wall. I have hooks, buttons,
barbs.
intel.
Yeah, hooks and barbs, right? So,
Right.
barbs, right? Those are the things that stick you that hurt, like barbed wire. When you're talking to somebody in negotiations or a crisis, and you say something that escalates them, that's a barb. So you want to try to find a de-escalator to bring them back down. And then the hook is, what is it that I can attach myself to them and get their emotional buy-in to where they're going to trust me to where I can build rapport, right? So
Mhm.
sometimes a hook could be looking around on the walls, like looking around just in my office. Like say, "Oh, who's this little girl on the wall? She's really pretty. Is that your daughter? Oh, tell me about her. Oh, wow, I bet she you love spending time with her. But right now you're really amped up right now. And it's scaring her. She's in the other room. So we want you to all feel better. And I'm sure you want to go and spend some time with her, right? And so that's going to be the hook. If he's like, "Yeah, that's my baby, that's my princess," and they may
Mhm.
call her by her, "Hey, that's my little pickles," or whatever whatever the little pet name is. These are hooks. Hooks are things that you want to continue to fish during a conversation until you get a bite. And that bite, then you can start really slowly reeling them in. And reeling them in looks like this. It looks like, okay, I've got rapport. Okay, I need some trust. Now that I've got trust, I need to really work at empathy. I need to put myself in
Right.
their place, not what I think I would do if I was in their situation, but how they're feeling and how they're reacting to the situation. There's a huge difference. And I think as you get to understand that, that's where human connection is made. And it's done by focusing on the person, right?
Mhm.
That you're dealing with and not the problem that they're involved in. The problem is the problem, right? And it's a
Right.
problem because of the way that they're acting out emotionally, not rationally. So if you can focus on that person and not the problem, then the outcome is going to be making a connection and not worrying so much about the correction of the issue, whatever that may be.
You mentioned the picture on the wall, you mentioned the hooks, and in law enforcement corrections, we're kind of conditioned, we're taught to be tough, to be calloused, to be kind of emotionally numb to the things that we see. But in the book here, you talk about vulnerability and being vulnerable when you're communicating, when you're trying to build this connection with an individual in crisis. Now, what's the line, and how important is it, when you're in these situations, to be able to let your guard down, during this interaction, when you're talking about building rapport, and then where's your line, when you're talking, for example, hey, is that your daughter on the wall? I bet you like spending time with her. Yeah, I do. Do you have any kids? Inside, and I'm sure on the street, you don't want to tell them everything about your personal life, where you live and all that. But when you're gaining rapport, what's that look like? Opening yourself up, and how did you get past that uncomfortable feeling of, just even your introduction?
Yeah. It started with the training, right? It started at the training and in the role plays. It was a little uncomfortable at first, especially when they started asking, just like you said, "Oh, well, are you married? Do you understand what I'm going through?
Right.
Do you want to give up that information?" For me, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna have a very open mindset to this training, right? I could be closed minded and say, no, I'm not buying into this. This is social work talk. This is not me. But I'm going to be open minded and I'm going to try it. So I became very comfortable with it throughout that week, sharing whatever I wanted to share,
Right.
which allowed me to really to do some self reflecting. Like, wow, I just shared that, and I haven't even shared that with some of the closest people. I just
Right.
shared it with a role player, but look at the reaction I got.
Right.
So as soon as training was over and we hit the streets, I started volunteering for mental health calls, and I was like, I want to try this out. Amazing that because there's power in story, and everybody has a story, right?
Mhm.
You have a story, I have a story. The people that we're dealing with in crisis, they have a story. If we're willing to be vulnerable and be authentic with who we are and share this, right? Share our feelings, share our emotions, and allow
Right.
them to do so freely without judgment. Man, I'm telling you, it is it's mind blowing because for so long I did things this one way
Mhm.
because that's how I was taught. And now this new concept of intervention training, and now we're talking 2003. I'm learning this and I'm applying it, and I feel comfortable doing it. I'm not being attacked. In fact, I got people very thankful for how I'm treating them with dignity and respect, and that human connection, it lasts. I've had people call me still years later. Hey, thank you. You helped me get qualified with benefits, and I got my first Social Security check, and I took my mom to dinner at Olive Garden, and it's like the greatest thing for them, and they're in tears. And it's why did you get in this line of work,
Mhm.
right? Did you join for the right reason, or are you grow up watching Cops and Live PD and everything looks sexy, and that's why you
Right.
joined?
Right.
Or are you honestly, because that was me. I wanted the sexy and I did those units, but I realized, man, there's so much more. And I missed so much in my career. Like in corrections, people don't understand. Like y'all do such an amazing job in what you're doing with an individual to prepare them for release back into the community to where we can feel safe and comfortable. Say, man, you spent some time with this individual. You were open with them. You shared with them. You were vulnerable with them. They accepted you. They learned that it's okay to be that type of person. They
Mhm.
learned about their trauma as a child and why they acted the way they did. And now they're transformed and they're coming back into society, and you help facilitate that to keep us safe. So it's really no different than what we're doing out there on the street.
That's awesome that you brought that up, because a lot of times, when we receive people off the street, they're mad at you guys, and they come in and we say, "Look, we didn't bring you here. The police stayed out here. let us build this relationship and this rapport with you, work on all the things that you're talking about. But now that you brought that up, and one of the things that we kind of battle is the, you know, the purpose of our position, the job, you know, the endless cycle of recidivism, and does it really matter? But what you just said was pretty impactful to me, because you know, on the street, the way you interact with the individuals that you bring in has a direct impact on my day, on my safety, and then on the flip side, the way that we interact and engage with these individuals that are incarcerated then has a direct impact on not only your safety but the community's safety as well, because we have the ability on both sides to change their perception of what it is that the uniform represents, what it is that we do as a facility or as an agency. And that's, man, that just blew my mind. That's something that I've drawn the line from you to us. I've never circled it back around from us to you. And that is crazy that you said that. So I appreciate you saying that, man. I hope everybody understands that this circle, man, that we all work together, and how you deal with individuals, how you interact with individuals has a direct impact on their interactions with other people. That's awesome, dude. I appreciate you saying that.
And no, of course. You know, it's and I mean it, truly do, because individuals that go back in and do recidivate and commit crimes, you know, there's been times where they've ended up in my back seat, taking them back to jail, looking up their information. You know, here comes up all the information of their past. You know, and I can see, you know, all their charges, um, what they've been incarcerated for, and they're like, "Oh man, you know, you're going to judge me on this." And I said, "No, here's what I'm going to do." And I hit delete. I said, "Tonight we start over, man. Tonight you got to own responsibility for what happened. I'm not judging you on the past. The past is the past. It's gone. I deleted it.
Right.
I don't even
Right.
care about it. It's gone. Um, but own this. Let's get through this together. I'm going to walk you through the process." And man, I tell you what, I've had people like, "Hey man, they shake your hand when you're getting ready to leave, and they still have to wait to see the magistrate. Thank you so much for, treating me with respect, man. You're
Right.
right." So it does go full circle all the way, all the time.
One of the biggest stumbling blocks to this technique, this tactic that we're talking about, communication, is the first thing that they talked about when I went through crisis intervention, and then the crisis negotiation training is your introduction, and you speak to it in your book. You know, we're Officer Young, we're Officer Stevens, we're Lieutenant so and so, we're Sergeant so and so. Um, that's not how they teach you to introduce yourself in these situations,
And no, in fact, that's why I love the name of the film, right? Ernie and Joe,
right?
right? And they had to put crisis cops on there, or else people are going to be like, "What the hell is this show's about?" Like, what is this, man?
Right,
You know.
right,
But yeah, I mean, that's who we are. We're just Ernie and Joe, and we're here to help, and we're here to listen, and we're here to support. That's who we are. We're not here because you did anything wrong and you're in trouble. We're here because somebody was worried about you, or maybe you called because you were worried about you. So let
right.
us be a part of the process to help you feel better. I mean, so yeah, you get. I mean, for me, it was real easy to get past that. There's no ego involved. In fact, for those that are watching, if you haven't gone through crisis intervention training and you're signed up to go, and check your ego at the door, please, no matter what rank you are, because this is a class like no other class. Emotions will get high
Hmm.
because role plays will be very real. I've had officers break down crying in role plays. Um, I've seen it. I've seen them walk out because something was just a little too close to home that they've never dealt with before. This isn't like going to bike school or rifle school.
Right.
This is very emotional, and it's a long week. And yeah, I would say take advantage of it. It changed my career path completely from what I was doing, and I feel so complete being retired. Although I didn't stay retired long, but complete in my job and my career field, that I was able to help some people and truly make a difference and leave a footprint. Instead of saying, like all other officers, how do you measure success after law enforcement? Well, I made it out alive,
Right.
and that's such a low bar that we set for ourselves. Are we making a difference?
Right. I mean, that's really we're in the people industry, and that's what we do. And our interactions, I mean, they have, not to be corny, but a butterfly effect, man, on society. And you can really, your interactions, just look at just this is how I look at the world, man. Whatever led up to you becoming a police officer, taking this course, getting on this movie. I mean, you changed my career path. You changed the way I interact with individuals, and then that has rippled on to other officers, and thousands of people reading this book, thousands of people seeing the documentary, and it's just, I mean, it's incredible, man, and that's all because of you. So I appreciate that. I have a good question here. I want to throw at you real quick.
All right.
My buddy Anthony, host of Tear Talk, another YouTube channel about corrections, good friend of mine. We have a little rift between us sometimes about this communication technique, and he's a big manipulation guy, and he wrote a book on manipulation. It's fantastic. But so his question is, who technically controls the interaction between you and the person in crisis? Is it the negotiator or the person in crisis, or is it a balanced interaction?
Yeah, that is a good question. I think it could be balanced. I don't try to control the conversation, but I do try to guide the conversation. And there's a difference there, right? You want to allow the person to feel empowered with whatever their issue is because it's their issue. They're the person that defines the crisis,
Hmm.
not me, right? Not you as the negotiator, right? It's their crisis. So I let them come to me and say, okay, well, what does this crisis look like for you? Okay, let me see if I can help you guide yourself through this crisis for to resolve this, right? To get up to some type of resolution. So I think it can be balanced, but I really allow the person a lot of leeway because at the end of this negotiation, I'm going to allow them to make some decisions as well, right? If
Hmm.
there's going to be a hospitalization, where do you want to go? Where have you been in the past that has treated you good? Right? Let's see if that's available and I'll make that happen for you. Right? But you have to agree that you need to get this help, right? Things crossed the line tonight. You placed yourself in danger or somebody else. So let's just get you checked out, make sure that your blood levels are good, your electrolytes are good, and then just get you stable for a little bit, and we'll get you back to quality activities of daily living that you can have good quality of life again. So again, I let them probably do most of it, but I'm there to guide them so it doesn't get off track and we start going down these rabbit holes.
And then we touched on it a little bit, but the balance of what you share and what you don't share, keeping in mind the tactical advantage of letting an individual in crisis know, yeah, I have kids, so I don't understand what you're going through, but I do, as a father, I can empathize a little bit with not being able to see them, versus, yeah, these are my kids' names and these are where they go to school, and if you want to pick them up on Friday, I'll be standing there, so I mean, it's a little unnerving, and especially in the correctional environment where you go to a door, you go to a cell, and then you interact with that individual forever. And so a lot of the contention with correctional officers is, I'm not going to go up and introduce myself by my first name because I have to work with that individual tomorrow. But for me, 17, 18 years in the game, they know my first name anyways. I
Yeah.
mean, so it's beneficial at the end, and I put myself in that position for the greater good, for the correctional objective, to keep a person from jumping or cutting themselves, or whatever. And if that means they get my first name, they get my first name. But I there's another fantastic spot in here, and I think that and I run into this a lot with just your normal interactions with inmates, and I tell officers, we tell officers, say no, 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 we're not doing this. No, you can't do this. And I always tell them, well, why don't you tell them no because? And so you talk a little bit about guided imagery, and I like this. I like talking to people, explaining what's happening and what they can expect. So how does kind of define guided imagery a little bit for me a little bit better, and for those who have never heard it, and how does this help in particular during like a crisis situation?
Yeah. Guided imagery really is me giving you an idea of what it's going to look like from where we're standing right now to where we need to get, right? For example, if I say, hey, William, I'm having a barbecue this weekend. I know that you live, you know, over on this side of town. All I need you to do is take this highway. You'll exit here. You'll make a left at the Pizza Hut, go down 3 blocks, take a right on the third house on the right, right? And as you're driving and you're like, oh, there's my exit. There's the Pizza Hut. Yep. There's the first right, third house.
Mhm.
Yep. That's what he drives, right? It relieved little by little,
Right.
whether you knew it or not, it relieved the anxiety. You didn't have to put it in Waze or maps or whatever. You're like, yeah, I can figure that out. And then as you went to each benchmark, you were like, oh, yeah, oh, yep, here he is. We're here, park. And you never gave it a
Mhm.
second thought
Right.
versus, damn, man, where am I again? Crap. Now I got to text him. I got to call him. I can't find it. And your anxiety goes up because you don't want to be late or whatever. Well, what I talk about here with guided imagery, and I explain it in two different ways here, is one, with a mental health patient, if I know I'm going to have to do an involuntary commitment or take them in voluntarily if they're willing to go to get some help, I let them know, look, very simply, all we're going to do from this point forward is I'm just going to pat you down, make sure you don't have any weapons, right? That's for your safety and mine. You'll hop in the vehicle. There's no handcuffs needed, right? You're not going to do anything silly. So hop on in. We're gonna give you a ride to the hospital. When we get there, first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to registration. I'll get you signed in. A nurse will take you to the back. I'll stay with you. They're going to check your blood pressure, your temperature, your sugar levels, right? And then after that, you're going to see a doctor in the order that you came in. And I know it's going to happen that way because it happens like that every single time.
Right.
So, as this person who's in a mental health crisis, everything like, okay, he just put me in the car without handcuffs. Okay, cool. Yep, we're at the facility he said he was going to bring me to. He didn't trick me and take me to the county hospital or whatever, right?
Right.
And then everything starts unfolding in front of their eyes and benchmarks are being met. You can see the anxiety and the fear of the unknown go away. Same thing for a person that's been arrested for the very first time. When I was on the DWI unit, a lot of times people have never been arrested before and they're crying, they're scared. I don't want to go to jail. Let me tell you what's going to happen, right? Let me help relieve your fears a little bit.
Right.
And I walk them through the process. This is what's going to happen. They're going to fingerprint you, take your picture. You're going to go back to me. We're going to do some paperwork. I'll offer you a breath test or a blood test. It's totally up to you if you want to do it. And then you'll see the magistrate in the order you came in. After that, you'll be released based upon your bond, right? I know that's going to happen because it always happens.
Right.
And you can see it as if I do that out in the field, they begin to trust you. They begin to build that rapport. And I've even had them where I've taken them back, read them the forms. Did you want to take a breath test? Well, what do you think I should do? I'm like, I can't advise you of that, but
Right.
I'm
Right.
glad that you trust me. Well, man, I mean, you've been cool to me. I'm like, yeah, I get it. I'm treating you decent, but you've got to make this decision, right? It just helps relieve the fear of the unknown. And for all of us that's ever been in a crisis that's scared and doesn't know what's going to happen, guided imagery is really a way to help calm a person down.
No, I mean, I love that example you gave of just coming over to somebody's house because going to somebody's house, one of the biggest stressors of my life is I was coaching basketball for my kids, not the game plan, not who am I going to sub in or out, but how do I get in the freaking gym? Where do I park? Is this door, is the north door open or the south door open? And that really added a lot of stress. And to be able to have somebody say, look, you're going to go to this door, this is where you go. This is the locker room. Even so much as what is the home team sitting here or there? I mean, when you talk about chipping away at stress and anxiety just a little bit at a time like that, I think that's a great illustration and something that we can use in corrections just as easily because although we've had this conversation 1,000 times and we know what's going to happen, those people may not. And to be able to, and I've heard it when I see people fingerprint people when they come in and they talk about it and they talk to them and they kind of talk about the court process and when you're going to get to use the phone and who, because a lot of that stress is the unknown. What's going to
Yeah.
happen to me? I'm in a place where I can't get out of. And just a little bit of time, just a little bit of, slowing that situation down because these principles of crisis communication that we're talking about and that Ernie is bestowing his wisdom upon us is stuff you can use in your everyday life as well. Especially inside of a correctional facility. I always talk about, your rapport building and they say, well, how, when you get called to deal with somebody that's barricaded or that's suicidal, I always tell them, look, my rapport with that person started 10 years ago. My rapport with that person started, when I said good morning to him, you know, 3 times next week or your last week when I walked by. I mean, how you carry yourself, how you interact with yourself, and people, because you never know. And I think such an awesome analogy, and I'm gonna use that because that is I mean, I think people have these ideas in their head where like, well, I've never interacted with a suicidal individual, and I don't know, but how do you know? You know, I mean, you just I there's a situation that we had where um a lady was making suicidal comments, and I watched an officer storm off. It said after, okay, I get it, I get it, I get it, I get it, storm off to go start the process of calling medical, letting them know, talking to mental health, getting them a room, transferring to them a room where we're going to take all of their clothing, all of their personal items, give them a suicide smock, and then set them in a dark room for 3 days until somebody comes and sees them. Talk about anxiety when you get to that room. Hey, yeah, hey, I asked for your help and now you're throwing me in a cell. There's 6 officers in there and you're taking my clothes. What the hell's going on? Being able to sit down, pull up a chair, sit knee
Yeah.
to knee and say, "Hey, let me tell you what's going to happen. First of all, have you attempted before? What happened today? These are you have attempted. Well, how did you do it? These are the things that are going to happen now." And walking them through that process, I have found has alleviated a lot of not only stress on their part, but stress on my part too, because they're not as volatile as they could be. There's not that point where they say, "Hey, you lied to me," or "Hey, I came to you for help, and now you're locking me up," and that's not what I wanted. And so I think that's great, and I think that's something that if you're watching and you want to get anything out of this, man, uh, that rapport and just chipping away at that anxiety just a little bit is huge. So that guided imagery, man, that thing is spot on. I love it. I love it. I I think for me, when I went to one of the things I learned when I went to negotiating school for the first, when I went through, which was a terrible, horrible experience, by the way. All the things you said about crying and being sick, and it's all true. And I just sent some people through, and we tell them that these terrible things are going to happen to them, and they don't. They've been to training before and they're like, yeah, right. Okay, whatever. I've been to training before. But then you see that oh shit moment on their face and you're like, yep, there it is. You got it now. First time they tell somebody, oh, you sound frustrated, oh, of course I'm frustrated. I got a fucking gun. And or I understand what you're going through, I mean, and then the
Oh
role
man.
player are good. The role players are gonna just and then you're just sitting back, you're like, okay. So I learned that I was a great, I always kind of peg myself as a good talker, as a great talker, um, which I was, but I was a terrible communicator.
Yeah.
And this book, and we talked about active listening a little bit, but it breaks down these skills, these active listening skills that are so helpful in not only your crises, but everyday interactions. And in the book, you talk about gathering information versus to problem solving. And I think, and I like this because it speaks to the slowing down the situation, to building rapport, and to help whatever is going to happen end peacefully. And I think for us, and if you could talk about that a little bit, because for us in corrections, we're very ground and pound. To give you a visual, a small fire breaks out on a floor, and people are stomping on it with their feet. Boom, 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 boom. Put it out. Get it. And somebody dumps a big picture of water on it. That's the correctional response most times. And crisis intervention is the opposite of that. It's slowing it down. It's building that. So talk a little bit about the gathering information versus problem solving, and what's the difference, and why is that important when we're operating in this capacity?
Right. The simple way to put this is if you're problem solving, then you're talking, right? If
Oh,
you're gathering information, you're listening. So if you're doing more talking than you are listening, you're not doing, you may think you're communicating, but you're trying to problem solve and control the situation. And you're in control of nothing, to be honest with you. What you're trying to do is build that rapport and that empathy to get that person to go to a peaceful resolution with where you want to be. So gathering information is allowing that person using those active listening skills, reflective mirroring, paraphrasing, effective pauses. It's not because you don't know what to say, it's because you're trying to elicit some more information.
Right.
All of that gathering data and information is going to be very helpful, especially if you're going to do a warm handoff to maybe another facility or to a doctor. But if I keep cutting you off because in my mind, okay, I've already got enough criteria to take you. I really don't need to hear anything else you said. I got
Right.
enough for my report. I'm going to miss a lot, right? Because there's a good chance that this person could go back into another crisis, right? In the next 48 hours, they may get released very quickly, especially if they don't have insurance. They're back on the street, and now they're calling 911 again, and you really did nothing. But if you took the time to gather information, gathering information is going to allow you to, who do I need to send this person to follow up to? What type of services do they need? Is it substance use treatment? Is it co-occurring disorder? Or did I just hear I'm suicidal, I've got a knife and I want to kill myself? Well, that's all I need
Right.
to hear. Well, hold on. Like you said earlier, have you ever attempted suicide in the past? A better way to ask that is, what happened the last time you attempted suicide? Right? I wouldn't even ask, have you? What happened the last time? I'm already going to
Right.
make that assumption
Right.
and see what kind of response I get. Because they could say, well, I took a bunch of medication and they pumped this shit down my throat and this charcoal and it came out both ends. Well, that's telling me that you took a toxic ingestion that was serious enough that they had to pump your stomach, right?
Right.
So, how long ago was that, right? Did you have any family members that completed suicide? These are things I need to know. And if I just stop with the criteria, then I'm not gathering information. Now I'm starting to problem solve.
Right.
So very simply, that's the easiest way to do it is to tell the difference is you should be listening a lot more than you're talking.
Well, and the problem solving is I mean it's actually it's kind of funny if you think about it because taking a person off the street or moving a person from one housing unit to restrictive housing unit, put them on suicide watch or behavior watch. It's not really solving the problem. It's solving your problem with that individual right there and moving them to somebody else and
Yeah.
to have that information and that situation that I brought up earlier, sitting down with that individual and asking them, and I'm going to change now instead of have you ever attempted before to what did you do the last time? How was, I like that. I'm going to use that. And I'll give you credit in the middle of my conversation with those people. Ernie Stevens wants me to ask you, have you ever, um, just getting that info in the few minutes that I took to sit down with an individual and have that conversation, I could hear down the hall the officer that's talking to medical saying, "I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if she has. I don't know why she's doing this. I don't know." But I did because I just sat and asked her. Because
Yeah.
to me the problem was not okay, we got to get this person in the medical unit so we can move on. But to me the problem was this person's suicidal. What led them to this? What caused this? And how do I help this person get through this situation? Because ultimately, if we can get her through this situation, then it's not a situation for us at all. Like we don't have to do paperwork, we don't have to go to a grand jury. I mean, there's a lot of things that just some effective communication can really change. Um, but I like that, and you talk about in your book, you break down these active listening skills. And so, what's your favorite? And these don't sound natural at first. I mean, we beat people up because we're like, we told you to do emotional labeling, and you're paraphrasing, and but what? So, what's your go to? What's your favorite? Approach when you're talking.
The iMessage by far is liquid gold. That is the one where you are going to now place yourself in that situation with them to let them know how exactly it is that they're making you feel, which is okay. And some of your listeners are probably saying, well, it's not about you, it's about them. And I agree, it
Right.
is. But if you've made that type of involvement in there, and I put the formula in the book on how to use it, it's I feel whatever
Right.
your emotion is, when you, whatever you're doing, because why that you're making me feel that way. So I'm just gonna put you on the spot. You ready to do a role play?
Sure.
Yes, you are. Okay. So we're going to use an iMessage here. You have got a 15-year-old teenage daughter. There you
Okay.
go. Congratulations. Her name is Brooke. All right.
Okay.
I'm going to be Brooke. All right.
Oh
So
no.
mom, yeah, oh yeah, I'm Brooke. So mom is not in the picture. It's just you and Brooke. All right.
Okay.
You ready? So, and
Ready.
you have to stick to the formula. You got to
Okay.
use the I feel when you because. All right.
I feel
All right. Get
when
ready.
you.
Uh
Hang on. Let me write this down because I'm excited about this. Okay.
huh.
All right.
All right. Hey, Dad, can I talk to you about something?
Sure, Brooke. Go ahead.
Well, I don't want to go to mom because she never understands and she just never listens. But I feel like I can talk to you about this. You know that new guy Bill that just moved in down the street?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, like I have like two classes with him, and we've been walking home after school together, and he's been holding my hand. And Dad, I really think he told me he loved me, and I think I love him. Do you think you can help me get on birth control?
I'm using a silence right now as a.
That's an effective pause.
Yeah. um. Geez, I don't. That's a good one.
Hey man, stick to the script. Let's hear it.
So I
How do you
feel,
feel?
Brooke, when you talk about birth control, I feel a little caught off guard about that. It's a little nerve wracking for me as a father. Have you looked into that at all?
So, so
Tear
your
me up.
script. So you feel right. You
Right.
feel. What did you say?
I
Concerned?
don't. Yeah. I
Yeah.
no, not concerned. I didn't use the word concern. Now.
No.
Uh, I feel
You haven't had a very
nervous.
good. Yeah,
Nervous.
I feel
Yeah.
nervous
Yeah.
when you come to me
When you.
about birth control because what?
Okay.
Why do you feel nervous, or why do you feel?
Because Uh, because of the age and because I'm not very familiar with with the process and with um the ins and outs of this.
Okay. All right. Good. Right. So and this is difficult because when I put an officer on the hot seat, right in the middle of class, they're like, "Oh yeah, just tell me where Bill lives, and give me your cell phone, and you're grounded, and this and
Right.
this, right?"
Right.
And that's a normal reaction when a child gets
Hmm.
in trouble. You're grounded. I'm taking the car away. You're losing your phone. But what message are you sending to that child? Right? It's I can't go to them anymore because if I try to
Right.
be honest and open, all I'm going to do is punish me and send me to my room or take away my phone. So from now on, I'm
Yep.
just not going to go to dad. I'll just maybe Bill will tell me what to do. Right?
Right. Right.
Good old Bill. But I had an officer say, "Well, I feel concerned when you come to me about birth control because you gave me control of that area over your life until you turn an adult. So I'm wondering why do you want to take that from me?" I'm like, damn, a cop came up with that.
Yeah.
And I asked him, I was like, his name was Troy. I said, Troy, have you had this talk? He goes, man, I just had this talk. They 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 talked about it at church, and I came home and I had this
Yeah.
discussion. So it's a great response because if you and I did it with my own son when he got in a little bit of trouble. I wanted to do the same thing, man. I wanted to ground him. I wanted just to, are you an idiot? Like just rip into him. But this little voice in my head said, all right, talk to your son, practice what you preach. And that's exactly what I did. I told him, son, I feel concerned when the school calls me to let me know that I need to come here because you've never been in trouble before. So let's talk about what happened and how we got here today. So, and what that did for me really was it led to an hour conversation on a park bench. We had a very vulnerable moment with each other, and we've been very open and honest with each other ever since then. So
Nice.
it's just a way to, and then always put a bad example in the book of how not to use it as well. And I'm sure you saw
Yes. Yes. I
that.
would say, Brooke, hey, Brooke, I understand that you want to bang Bill. However, that's how you were born, and I would say that you should not do that. That was
Very good.
the thing with this is that communication is no different than any other tactic that you learn. You have to practice and you have to take it serious. I remember when I went through in 2017 or 2018, and I was coming home, and I had my daughter, who's a little bit younger than Brooke, sitting in the car, and I was using emotional labeling, paraphrasing, and she goes, "I know what you're doing, Dad." I'm like, "What am I doing?" She goes, "You're just repeating the last few words that I say to you because you're practicing your negotiating thing." And I'm like, "Oh, jeez, man." Or if I'm getting to argue with my wife, she's like, "Don't use that shit on me." I'm like, "Oh, okay." I have another question. I have another question for you here. So Stacy, good friend of mine, and she's on my negotiating team. She wants to know: did you find it more often than not that you get a positive response when you're dealing with somebody when asking when was the last time versus it upsetting them? So that when you talked about assuming that they have attempted before, was the response, did it anger more people? Was it more helpful than just asking, "Have you?"
Yeah, no, I've never had a negative response, but there's always a first time for everything, right? I've had people say, "I've never done that before. This was my first attempt." Okay, well, tell me, what was the trigger, right? What got us
Right.
here? Versus, well, the reason I ask is because I can see some hesitation marks on your arm where it looks like maybe you've considered this in the past, right? Or I've had information maybe from a family member that said, "Hey, you know what? We've had to hospitalize them before because they attempted whatever." Right? So you can kind of go based on the information that you have about the individual. And if you don't, just say, okay, well, I'm not trying to offend you. I'm just trying to get as much information as I can so I know how best to help you. Right.
I do like in your book when you talk about the emotional labeling and you talk about throwing it out there. Um, you know, you seem angry. Well, I'm not angry. I'm just a little frustrated. Using that as some people are. We have that exercise where you play video and the person has to stand up and say, uh, "You seem," you would tell them not to say frustrated, right? You seem frustrated, but so they're working through their, in their head, their thesaurus. You seem agitated. You seem, whatever, and it's like, just throw something out there, and then let them tell you.
Yeah.
Maybe, and it's the same thing with asking a person if they're suicidal. A lot of people are afraid of that question because if they're not, you're going to make them suicidal, but that's not the case, right? I mean, just ask them and then let them answer and see where that goes, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So taking the class the very first time, I thought, well, if I ask them about if they're feeling suicidal, am I planting a seed for them?
Right.
And I was told by, we had subject matter experts, doctors, psychiatrists saying, no, I guarantee you it's not the first time they thought about this. In fact, have you ever thought about suicide? And I was
Mm,
like, well, yeah, I mean, but it was like a super fleeting thought, like, man, screw
right.
this world, Oh,
Right.
but damn, that's my jam, on the radio. And it's gone just
Right.
like that. Then it made sense to me. I was like, okay, so it's not offensive to ask. He goes, no, it's important that you ask because maybe nobody's even asked them that before, and they've been waiting for this, right? So I think it's important to try to gather as much information as you can, but do it in a respectful manner where they understand why you're asking these questions.
Ernie, where can these people they get your book? It's on Amazon, right?
Yeah,
And
if you want a personalized copy, I've got some here. So just go to erneststevens.com.
okay.
Ernest Stevens is all together. Stevens is spelled with a V. Erneststevens.com, and I can personalize them. I've got soft copies, hardback books, whatever you want. We'll
Man,
take
I
care of
need to
it.
get me a hardback. I need to get me a hardbacked personalized guy. I had to fight the Amazon driver for my copy. And yeah, but I would I'm gonna get a hold of you, man, because I would love to have a nice copy that I can sit and use because I'm gonna order some more. I'm gonna pass this one around because I think the information's that important. What about your documentary Crisis Cops? Is that still available to watch? Is where can people find that?
Yeah, so that's still streaming on HBO right now,
Okay.
Ernie and Joe Crisis Cops. It's streaming, I think, until November. So if
Okay.
you don't have a subscription to HBO, you can do the 7-day trial for free and then cancel. It's super easy to cancel. But if you do that and you watch it, please connect back with me and let me know what you thought. I'd love to get your feedback. I'd love to talk about it. If you have any questions about the film, I mean, we did it to help people and continue the conversation about mental health, and so that would be a great opportunity for me to connect with your viewers.
It's career changing material, guys, life changing material, and the documentary, the book. It's worth every penny. It's worth every second you spend studying that material. Communication is such a huge part of what we do, and it's so very important that it would behoove you to spend some time with this material. Ernie, do you have any parting words for our people that have been hanging out with us tonight, sticking through this with us?
Yeah, like I've been getting text messages. One of them is from Dr. Michael Sefton up in Boston. He came down from Boston. He's a psychologist up there. Did a ride along with me. Want to give him a shout out and tell him hello and thank you for the support. But parting words is, I know that policing in general has really taken a black eye lately.
Mhm.
I know that you did an interview with Dr. Phil. Congratulations
Thank you.
on representing corrections, and they're trying to give a black eye there too as well.
Mhm.
But what we have to do is understand that we both um, are in a noble profession, but it's up to us to keep it noble, right? In our actions and how we treat others. That's why I felt it was important to write this book. I wanted to put this book in the hand of every first responder that we could out there, as a basic guideline of what you could do to help de-escalate a crisis. What I quickly found out were community members were buying these books in bulk and taking them to the police department
Mm.
and handing them out or giving them to them at convenience stores. Hospitals and school districts started buying it. It just took off overnight. So something that I was very skeptical about, the training to begin with,
Right.
to writing this book, is number one, don't be afraid to take a chance and be open minded about something. But two, understand that change is okay. Being in the professions that we're in, making this a noble profession, striving for excellence in all that we do, we can only do so much. And it's up to us, really, to continue to carry the torch until you're ready to pass it off to the next generation.
That's fantastic, man. I appreciate you hanging out with me tonight. And there's a couple of questions in the comments. If you get time and you want to jump in there and address some of those guys, and if you want to get a hold of the book, if you have any questions or comments, I'll put our contact information, Ernie's and myself, in the comment section in the description of this video. Thanks everybody for hanging out with us tonight. And that's all we got. I don't have any parting words. I'm not going to try to follow what you said. But if you like this video, if you found value in this video and this information, then share it with somebody, anybody, your team at work, a fellow coworker, your neighbor down the street, and show them what we're doing here. Help us shed light on this fantastic skill, on these fantastic professions. Until next time, guys, be smart, stay safe, stay sane, and we'll talk soon.